Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr. Today we're going to talk about how to play Payoff Pitch Baseball. I haven't done a video that specifically explains how to play. I've done a lot of other videos about the game, and you always see a lot of questions on the Facebook forums or Delphi forums and that kind of thing. And I thought I would just take some time to go over how to play. Now I know you can read it in the rule book. However, some people are better visual learners or learning in different formats, and just reading straight through the rule book may not be their best way of picking up the game. Or sometimes it's nice just to see different perspectives and that kind of thing. So I thought I would make this video anyway. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the rules. And I'm going to give you the official rules as they're written in the rule book. And interspersed throughout this, I'll also give you some tips on how I play, which are maybe some little tweaks here or there of the rule book and how I actually play the game myself. I think the key thing to think of to start things off is that, Joe, the creator of Payoff Pitch, has been very clear that, if you don't like a rule or whatever the case may be, you are welcome to change it. You are welcome to play in whatever way you want to play. So that's why you'll find on sites different homebrew rules and that kind of thing. And I'll mention some of that stuff as I go through this. But I think that's the number one thing to keep in mind starting things off, is that whatever way you want to play is fine. It's your game. Once you buy it, it's your game. You can play whatever way you want. So if you don't agree with me on certain things, that's fine too. Whatever way you want to play is fine. I'll also say that, this is my this is my best take on the official rules and that kind of thing. If I don't, I'm probably going to be 95% right in what I say here. But if I am incorrect in anything, I'm sure I will be corrected in the comments down below. But I'm probably going to be 95% accurate. Hopefully, I'm striving to be more than that, but I'm probably going to be 95% accurate. So take that as you will. And as I mentioned before, if you are unclear about something or you want to know the answer to something that's not covered in this video, you can. There's a Facebook group. There's a Facebook group you can go to ask questions for Payoff Pitch, and there's also you can find it on the Sideline Strategy Games Delphi forum. You can ask questions there as well. And Joe is very accessible. He often answers questions. So don't be afraid to ask if you have questions. All right, well, with all of that said, I'm not going to go straight through the rule book, page 1 to whatever. I actually broke this into sections the way I kind of lay things out, or the way it makes sense to me. And so I'm just going to go through different sections of play. I'm going to cover everything that's in the rule book, but it's going to be maybe not in the exact order it's in the rule book. And I guess the first thing to start off with is you need to make a decision on whether you want to use strictly die rolls, whether you want to use the fast action cards, or a combination of both. I think a lot of players use a combination of both. They'll use primarily dice rolls for the main results, and maybe the fast action cards for base running or for stealing or bunting, or maybe for defense checks and that kind of thing. And again, Joe has made it very clear that whatever way you want to do it is fine. I think even it explicitly states in the fast action section that whatever way you want to use the cards is correct. It's the correct way if it makes sense for you. So the fast action cards can replace all die rolls. So you could play just with the fast action cards and not roll any dice at all. I don't know if there are very many people that play that way, but you could do it. They're designed to be used in that way. And the thing to keep in mind with fast action cards is that you should turn over a new fast action card every time you need a new roll, basically, so that you have good randomization going on. Just turn those over every time you have a new roll. So here's an example of what the fast action card looks like. And so every time you can see the 2d6 up here and the percentage dice, which we'll get to a minute up here. So you could use this to take care of everything and not have to roll any dice. As I said, it can handle base running, bunting, steals, defense, everything. Now, one thing for randomization that Joe recommends is that you shuffle the fast action cards before the game, of course. And if you want even more randomization to make sure it's completely random, reshuffle every 3 innings. That's the recommendation. Reshuffle every 3 innings. Now, many people, they shuffle once, they play all the way through, and that's fine. But you could shuffle more often if you want more randomization involved. Just something to keep in mind. Now, that's just between dice and fast action cards. Let's talk about the player cards and how they're laid out. I have up a pitching card and a batting card here. And we're just going to look at what the different elements here and kind of walk through those. So we have Sandy Koufax here, 1963 LA Dodgers, Sandy Koufax. And the way the pitcher's card is laid out, you can see the throwing hand of the pitcher up in the left-hand corner. By the way, the physical cards may look slightly different, but all of this information is also on the physical cards. I just have the PDFs here. So he has his pitching hand. He's a lefty. You have his age. He's 27 years old this year. You have his batting, pitcher's batting ratings. So he bats right-handed. He uses pitcher's hitting card number 2, which there's, I believe, 10 or 12 pitcher's hitting cards. And C is his sacrifice bunt rating. That's what these numbers here are. Right-handed batter, pitching card or hitting card number 2, and a C bunter. Below that, you have his fielding ratings. F, it's A to F, and F is the worst for range, and 1 to 5 for errors, and 1 is the worst. So Sandy Koufax is a horrible fielder as a pitcher, but fortunately that doesn't come up too often. Fatigue is his fatigue number of innings for his fatigue rating, which we'll talk about later. Hold is how well he holds runners on to prevent them from stealing. Lower is better in this case. Injury, there's an injury range of normal. I think it's prone, normal. I'm forgetting one. Prone, normal, iron, and I'm forgetting durable. Durable and iron. DP is this double play rating. The higher the better, actually. Higher numbers mean he induces more double plays. WP is wild pitch, his wild pitch rating or number, if you want to call it that. And strikeout is a supplemental strikeout rating that most pitchers don't have, but some pitchers do, to give them a few more strikeouts. In fact, I think, Dwight Gooden, if you see Dwight Gooden 1985, he has a supplemental strikeout range here, 50 to 56. So that's what the pitcher card looks like. And then, of course, you have the main section, which is the results, I guess, the pitching results. And then down below, you have the stats for that particular year. So this is 1963 LA Dodgers, Sandy Koufax, and here are his pitching stats for that year. Likewise, on the batter's card, again, you see his handedness. He's a switch hitter. Ozzie Smith is a switch hitter. He was 32 years old in 1987. He played for the Cardinals. All of the positions would be listed here. He only played shortstop that year, but if he had played other positions, they'd be listed here. His range, his error rating, and for outfielders or a catcher, you'd get an arm rating too, where lower is better on the arm rating. Then you have his double play rating. Again, lower is better, meaning he doesn't hit in very many. 6 is a roughly average. Injury rating, you get his steal, his jump, which is the first number, and his steal, which is the letter, and his run rating. Again, 6 to 7. 7's about average for numerical ratings most of the time. Sacrifice bunt, this is for auto bunting. You see his sacrifice bunt range and how good he is at sacrifice bunting. You'll also notice on batters cards that you'll get their stolen base statistics for that particular year and how many sacrifice hits they had, along with their stats for that particular year. Now, this is a split card, but you can get sets that aren't splits where you don't have lefty-righty splits and it's just one set of numbers. But here is stats for that year. And then up here are the results broken into wheelhouse, patient, tough, in play, and then the out section down here. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the overview of the card and how this works. So let's talk about the results. Let's talk about these results. So basically what you do is you roll 2 6-sided dice and add them together to get a result on the pitcher's card. And you roll percentage dice and look up that result on the batter's card in most cases. So the main things that you will see on a pitcher's card are 4 different categories of results. You'll see wheelhouse, which is a pitch that was grooved and left right in the heart of the plate. You'll see patient. I think of that like the pitcher got behind in the count and it's 3-1 count or something like that. You'll see tough. That's when the pitcher's ahead in the count. That's the way I view it anyway. And you'll see in play. Those are the main 4 results, and those you look up on the batter's card. So for example, down here I have a little dice roller here. Let's just look at an example. That's an 8. 8 on Sandy Koufax is tough. 59. So on Ozzie Smith's card, you'd look at tough, 59, and against left-handed pitching, you'll notice it only goes up to 24. If it goes above the range that's listed here, you come down to this out section to find out the result. So 59 was higher than 24. You come down here and look up 59, and it is F7. It's an F7, which is a fly out to left field. So that's how things go. You just look up the result, and in most cases, a majority of the time, that's as simple as it is. Now, let's look at some of these other results, though. What if it's not wheelhouse, patient, tough, or in play? Well, there's a few other categories here. There is a tough out, which you'll see Koufax has. And in the case of a tough out, what you'll do is if there is a tough out, let's say this was a tough out instead of a ballpark. Tough out 47, we would look up here. And if it was not in the strikeout range, then we immediately go to the out section, which means if this had been a 20, normally on a normal pitcher's tough section, a 20 would still be a single for Ozzie Smith against left-handed pitchers. But in Koufax's case, if it's a tough out, the 20, we would look through 1 to 12 first. If it's above that, we immediately go to the out section. And so if we rolled a 7 on Koufax and Ozzie Smith, the percentage was a 20, it would actually be a pop-up to second base, P4. We would skip the hits in here and go directly to the out section. That's what a tough out is. Now, patient out works the same way. I haven't seen it on very many cards. I don't know that I've seen it on any cards, but I think it's out there. So it's pretty rare. But you'll see patient out. And in that case, if it's not a walk, because patient is where all the walks are, if it's not a walk, then it's an out. And usually the patient outs will list like patient G6 or something like that, which means it's either going to be a walk or it's going to be a ground out to short or whatever it may be. Again, I haven't seen that on very many cards. Likewise, you can see in play, you can see in play G6 and that kind of thing as well. Again, not very often that you see that, but in those cases, it's kind of unique. If it's the pitcher's first inning, then you read it as a normal in play result. But if it's after that first inning, it's an automatic out. And usually it'll say in play G4 or in play whatever, F7. And in those cases, if it's not the first inning, it's whatever the second result is. Again, I don't see that on hardly any cards, so very, very rare to see that. Um, so those are the main things. The other thing, so we're going to talk about these individually. You'll also notice that pitchers have a ballpark and a defense, and those you do not look at the batter's card for immediately. Defense and ballpark, you don't look at the batter's card. Now, some pitchers, instead of defense, they'll have either error or range, because most of the time on a defense, you're going to check to see if it's an error or range. But if you see error or range, you skip that step and go immediately to that section, either error or range, for the check. But most pitchers have defense, in which case you're going to go through a process to determine that result, just like you do with a ballpark. So let's talk about ballpark results first. So I did roll 4 here, which is ballpark on Sandy Koufax's card. And in that case, what we do is we come over here to the ballpark card, and I'm just saying we're playing at the 1921 Polo Grounds. And what you do is you compare this percentage to the percentage section up here. And it's either going to be a wheelhouse or an in-play. It's either going to be a wheelhouse or an in-play. And since Ozzie Smith is a switch hitter, that means against Koufax, who's a lefty, he's going to bat right-handed. You'll look in the right-handed batter section. And 47 in this section is wheelhouse. So it'd be a wheelhouse result. And then we would need to roll the percentage dice again. 97. We'd roll the percentage dice again and look at the wheelhouse section of Ozzie Smith's card to determine the result. In this case, 97, because Ozzie Smith doesn't hit any home runs. 97 is above all of the wheelhouse ratings, and so we come down here to the out, and it's a fly out to right field. Had this been in instead of 40, whatever it was, let's say we had rolled this 97 on the ballpark, then it would have been an in-play result, and we would have looked in the in-play section on Ozzie Smith's card. So again, on a ballpark, off the pitcher's card, you look at the percentage, you look at which hand the batter's using, left-handed or right-handed. You look up that percentage on the chart, and it's either going to be a wheelhouse or an in-play. Then you're going to roll percent dice again and look at the batter's card to determine the result, and it's either going to be in the wheelhouse section or the in-play section, and you proceed as normal. So that's how the ballpark results look. Now let's talk about defense. I mentioned it prior, but let's say we rolled a 3 on Koufax's card, and that's a defense check. Well, there is a chart that you can use for defense to determine whether it's an error or range check. Now let's just look at that defense chart real quick. Here it is. So here's the defense chart. And if you're using dice, then you would roll the dice, percentage dice, and look at this to determine whether it's a range or an error check. So let's say we rolled a 66. 66 is in this, so it's an error chance on the third baseman. An error chance on the third baseman. Okay, so knowing that, error chance in the third baseman, now you go back to the ballpark card, which has a range section and an error section, and you look up the fielding rating for the third baseman in this case. And I said error on the third baseman. Let's say his error rating was a 3. So you would go error 3. I got to pull this up a little bit. There's all 5 of them. So you look at the 3 section, and on a 1 to 53 on the percentage, it would be an error. On the 54 to 99, it would be an out. You'll notice that higher error ratings are better because the error range is lower. In the Polo Grounds, a 1 error rated fielder makes an error on a 1 to 70. A 5 error rated fielder only makes an error on a 1 to 34. Likewise, on the range section, we would look A, B, C, D, or F, whatever the range is, and we'd refer to this section, the percentage dice, to see, we'd roll percentage dice again, I should say, to determine whether it's a hit or an out. So on range checks, it's going to either be a hit or an out. On error checks, it's going to be an error or an out. And again, if you're rolling dice, you got to look at this section of the chart to determine whether error or range and which fielder we're checking. So let's say let's keep with our error example and say that we rolled an error on the third baseman and it was an error. Then what you would do is you would roll 2d6 and check this section. Here's the error section. And you would cross-reference the number rolled with the position. So we said third base, and let's say we rolled a 5. So a 5, third baseman is a 1 base error right there. And that would tell you what the result is. Now, runners advance the same number of bases as the error. So 1 base error, everybody moves up 1 base. If it's a 2 base error on an infielder, then you'll see here that it says 2 base errors are throwing errors if it's a catcher, pitcher, or one of the infielders making them. 2 base errors for a first baseman is from not catching a mostly on target throw. So a throw gets by the first baseman, 2 base error. A single in an error is when the batter gets a hit but advances an extra base on the error. So that's what single in error is. You'll also notice dropped foul ball here for catcher. That's because in baseball, if you're a catcher and you drop a foul ball, even though no runners advanced or no runner got on base because of it, it prolonged the at-bat, and therefore it's considered an error. So it's an error because it prolonged the at-bat. It could have been an out, but you didn't make the catch, so it prolonged the at-bat. And in those cases, you'd re-roll to determine the result, the eventual result. So that's the error section. Same thing with a range. So let's say you rolled and it was range third base, and you rolled in the range section on the ballpark card, and it was a hit. You roll your 2d6, and let's just roll the 2d6 here. 5. And we're going to stick with the third baseman example. 5, third base, is a single with 1 dot. That means a single, 1 base single. Runners advance the number of bases as the number of dots here. So you'll see single, 1 base. Single with 2 dots means single, and runners advance 2 bases. You'll also notice on some of these, like the double here, there's a little cross symbol. And that means that runner with a run rating of 8 or higher gets a triple and not a double in that case. So that can happen as well. Now let's say it was higher than the error or range number, or error or hit number in the range section. Then you'd come down and look at the out section down here. And you would roll your 2d6, 8. Now we're sticking with the third baseman example. And we'd say 8, third baseman, ground ball plus advance. Well, there's the glossary of what all of this stuff means. Ground ball plus advance means the batter's out at first, but the runners advance. So the only play was at first base. So if there was a runner on first and you got this result, that runner on first would move to second, but the batter's out. If there was a runner on second and you got this ground ball plus advance, he would move to third, but the batter would be out. But you can see all of the results here. Again, dropped foul ball, you restart the at-bat. GB advance, that's ground ball advance. GBFC is a fielder's choice. A lead runner's out, batter's safe. Other runners advance 1 base. So that's how you would play that. GBDP, you'll notice it says GBDP and it'll list a letter afterwards, either an A or an A and B. That means that it could be a double play. If the fielder's range is either A or B, then it's a double play. If it's not a double play, then it's the force out, as they're trying to turn a double play, but they don't turn the double play. Pop out and line out, runners hold on those. Line out double play, you'll see down here, line out DPAB, again, if the fielder's range is A or B, then it's a line out double play. The fielder makes a great catch and doubles off the closest runner if there's a runner on base. Short fly, the batter's out and runners hold. Now the runner, if there's a runner on 30, he could attempt to score, but you'd reduce his run rating by 2 and use the coach's choice chart, which we'll see in a minute. That's on a short fly. Deep fly, same thing. Batter's out, but now a runner on second and third, if they have a run rating of 6 or higher, advance. So it could be a sacrifice fly, or the runner on second could tag up. If they don't have a run rating of 6 or higher, they have a choice to advance as well. Either way, a runner on first base isn't going to advance on those. And then you have a short fly DP, question mark, that you'll see down here and here. In those cases, if you have an outfielder that has an arm of 5 or less, not only do they make the catch, but they throw the lead runner out if there's runners on base. So it could be a double play if they have an arm rating of 5 or less. So that's just a quick glance through the rules section here. Now, many people don't use that whole chart and roll percentage and all that business, and they'd use the fast action card. They flip the fast action card, and you'll see right here in the middle it says defense, error, second base. So instead of rolling the percentage dice, you would just look at this and then you're going to check for an error on the second baseman. You're going to come down here, look at the second baseman's error rating. You're going to roll percentage dice, which if you're going to do that on the card, you can either roll the dice themselves or you can just advance to the next card, 77, and you're going to look in this section. 77 wouldn't be an error for anybody, so it's going to be an out. And then there's a chart down here you can look up, and you flip another card. You'd come down here to the chart, and since we've been dealing with third base, let's just stick there. Out. We're going to look at the out section because I just said 77 wouldn't be an out for anybody. Out in the third base section is a, let's see here, infielder ground ball double play A. If it had been an error, we would have looked cross-reference error with the infielder, single, and single plus 1 means single plus a base. So hits, errors, and outs, you can check this section. Again, you're going to keep flipping a card, though, every time to get a new card to deal with. So you get random results. You don't want to use the same card for 2 different parts of that process. Otherwise, you're not going to get really random results. So that's what some people do also. Instead of using the chart I just showed, they use this section of the fast action cards. So you can do that as well. All right, so that's defense. Let's talk about wild pitches, because that can happen too. We had a wild pitch section on Koufax's card. What that means is when there's runners on base, when there's no runners on, you ignore the wild pitch section altogether. But if there's runners on base and you roll a 30 or 31 on the percentage dice, then I'd be very lucky. Oh, look at that, 36. Okay. Well, it doesn't have a 36 in his range, but some pitchers have a wider range than this. Some pitchers don't have a wild pitch range at all. I should say that. So does Gooden? Yeah, he does. 30 and 31 for him. 30 and 31 for Koufax. What about Kent Tekulve? 30. Okay, so if you roll a 30 or 31, and there's in Koufax's case, and there's a runner on base, it's a wild pitch. The runner advances, and what you do is you keep the 2d6 that result that was rolled, and you re-roll the percentage dice. So you would keep the 2d6, which was a 7 before, and it's a 7 again, and you'd re-roll the percentage dice. If it's a wild pitch result again, then it's back-to-back wild pitches. But the second time, if it's not a wild pitch, you read the result as you normally would. So a tough out, 79. So anytime you roll in the wild pitch section, you stop things or freeze things right there, move the runner up, re-roll the percentage dice, and then check the pitcher's result, if that makes sense. And again, some pitchers do not have a wild pitch rating, which means they'll never throw a wild pitch unless it's a rare play. Okay? So, but if it's in the wild pitch range, that's what you would do to resolve that. Now, some pitchers have what I talked about before, the supplemental strikeout range. I believe Dwight Gooden that we just looked at had one. Dwight Gooden, 50 to 56. What that means is if there is an out in that range, then, and it's a 50 to 56 on the percentage dice, it's a strikeout. You consider it a strikeout. And again, this is just to get more strikeouts for pitchers that had a few more strikeouts. It's a way of just supplementing that. So whenever a batter makes an out and the percentage dice were in this range, 50 to 56, then instead of whatever out you rolled, it's a strikeout instead. This is an optional rule, but it does fine-tune the strikeouts a little bit. You'll notice Koufax didn't have one, which means you just read his results as normal. But Gooden, you would read any 50 to 56 out result would be turned into a strikeout. Now, some pitchers, like Kent Tekulve here, has this in their supplemental strikeout area, percent roll plus 10. And what that means is whenever you roll a tough 46, you add 10 to the percentage dice roll. So instead of tough 46, it would be tough 56. And again, this is a method of tweaking or a way to tweak pitcher strikeout totals so that they're a little bit more accurate for pitchers that were a little extreme one way or the other. Okay, so as I said, in Tekulve's case, any tough result, you would add 10 to the percentage roll here. And in this case, a 46 would become a 56. And then you look at the tough 56 on the batter's card like you normally would. But that's kind of what the supplemental strikeouts do. Let's see. Oh, rare plays. So that's the other thing that can happen. If you roll 0-0 on the percentage dice, you roll 0-0, which again, it's not going to happen because it's a 1 in 100 chance, right? But if you roll 0-0 on the percentage dice, then it is a rare play. And in that case, you come to the rare play charts, which are, here we go. You come to the rare play charts and you check the results on the rare play charts, or the number I rolled. I rolled an 8-14, and I had, we'll go to Koufax. We've been using Koufax. So tough, and ignore the 14. Let's just consider that that was a 0-0, and it's a rare play. So it would be a tough, rare play. And then, depending on the base running situation, if the bases are empty, you would look up bases empty, tough. Here's the chart for rare plays for tough and tough out. If there were runners on base, you would look at runners on base, tough, and look at that section. And you would roll percentage dice again to get a percentage, 16. So if there were runners on base tough, 16, you would read this and follow those results. Ump calls an obvious strike a ball. Okay? Several coaches on the pitching team complain about the call. The ump doesn't eject anybody, but he squeezes the strike zone even more. And now all tough results are turned to patient for the remainder of the inning while that current pitcher is in the game. So some of these rare plays can really change the trajectory of the inning or even the game in some cases. You can get some really interesting things out of here. Now, some people don't even play with the rare play charts. They ignore them, and that's fine too. I like it because it adds some interesting things that happen and some different things that can happen. All sorts of rare things. It could be weather related. It could be all sorts of things. And that's what the rare play. So if you roll double zeros, you look at whatever the pitcher's number was to determine which section you go to, and you go to that particular rare play section. Now, rare plays is also where you can get injuries. You can get injuries out of the rare plays. And in those cases, if you get a potential injury, there's an injury chart here in the rule book, and you cross-reference the injury rating of the players in question. What do we say? Ozzie Smith was durable. I'm just going to use Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith is durable. You roll percentage dice, and then you look in this section to determine how long the injury is. Now, in some cases, the player's okay. There's no injury. He stays in the game. But in all the other cases, they're injured for either the remainder of the game or remainder of the game in extra time. And again, I know some people don't play with injuries, so you could disregard those. But if you're playing with injuries, that's how you would find those. And they come off the rare play chart. Let's talk about different types of results. Now, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Let's just look at the hitter's card, excuse me. HR is a home run. 1B single, 2B double, 3B triple. BB is a walk. HBP hit by pitch. SO is a strikeout. Down in the out section, you have P for pop-up. So pop-up and then the fielder number. So here's the fielder numbers you can see. P4 is a pop-up to second. P6 a pop-up to short. P2 is a pop-up to the catcher. So on. G is a ground ball, a ground out. G1, G3, G5. L is a line out. So P is a pop-up, pop-out. G is a ground out. L is a line out. F is a fly out. F7, F8, F9. Flyouts to those particular fielders. So that's what the results are. Now, on strikeouts, if you want this kind of realism, or I get maybe realism isn't the right word. If you want to know whether it's a strikeout swinging or a strikeout looking, because sometimes you just want to know that. What I use, this is my own thing. It's not in the rule book, but this is what I do. Is anytime a strikeout percentage ends in an 8, 9, or 0, 8, 9, or 0, then it's a strikeout looking. Otherwise, it's a swinging strikeout. And I base that off of the percentages, the percent of the time that a batter strikes out swinging versus looking. But that's what I use. Again, you can do whatever you want. That's my version, not in the rule book, but it's how I do it. Okay. Now, that's all of the basics. Those basics are going to get you 90% of the way through of playing the game, right? I'd say the number one thing that I see people have trouble with is base running. Like base runner advancement. Base runner advancement. It seems to be the most confusing thing for people. And I guess the main tip I would give to start things off is that what you want to do is find a base running system that works for you and then just use that system, whatever it may be. And it can be strictly out of the book. There's a basic and there's an advanced base running system in the book, or for the fast action cards. You could go right out of the book, or you can use a combination of different base runner advancement systems, a combination of the fast action cards, or maybe the basic section, the basic rules, or whatever the case may be. You can use a combination, or you could come up with your own thing. There's a lot of homebrew out there for determining what happens with base runners on base hits and outs and all that stuff. Okay. I actually have my own chart, and I base it off of a chart that I think ID Jester came up with way back when, but I have tweaked it, and it's what I use, and I just use that chart, and then I don't have to think about it too much. There are other people that have put together charts based on the rules as written. So you can find a chart that lists all of the different base running configurations. Runner on first and second, runner on first, second, and third, runner on second, so on. There's a chart out there that you can find that somebody's put that together and specified what happens with the base runners. Again, it's probably one of the more confusing things that just based on the questions that I see out there, it's one of the more confusing things for people. But it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be. You just need to find a system that works for you. And if you find a system that works for you and use it consistently, then I think you'll be a good portion of the way there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, I'm going to break down the base running systems as specified in the rule books and tell you, kind of go through what you're supposed to do in each case for base running. And these are all in the base running rules on page 16 of the rule book. Okay, there's basic, and there's advanced. There's also alternate base running rules using the fast action cards, which I'll talk about. A lot of people use the fast action cards because, well, you'll see it kind of makes it simple. But let's go through them and talk about what each of these, how you would use each of these systems for base running. Well, let's start with basic base running, the basic base running rules. If you're not really concerned about where balls were hit and all that fun stuff, based on who the batter is and all that business, and you just want a simple system to use, then basic base running may be the one to use. Okay? In basic base running, all runners advance the same number of bases as the hit. So on a single, they advance 1 base. On a double, they advance 2 bases. On a triple, they advance 3 bases. In certain situations, runners get an extra base. So if there are 2 outs, runners get an extra base. If the hit came from the batter's wheelhouse section, runners get an extra base. Okay? So 2 outs, extra base. Wheelhouse, extra base. Patient. If the hit result comes off the batter's patient section, then the lead runner has the option to attempt the extra base using coach's choice. And you'll see coach's choice referenced a couple of different times. And it's this section here, coach's choice, attempt an extra base. Okay? And what you do in those cases is you roll 2d6 and compare the total to the runner's run rating and the fielder's arm ratings. And if it's equal to or less than both, the runner is safe. Okay? If it is greater than both, the runner's out. So if the runner has a 6 run rating, the fielder has a 5 arm rating, and you roll an 8, he's out. If you roll a 4, he's safe. If it's greater than 1 rating, but equal or less than the other, then, like it's in between, then you roll percentage dice and you check this little chart. And your results are either going to be out, safe, or it's going to be a drop or a wild. Drop, you would roll a d6, compare that to the fielder's E rating. And if it's lower than the E rating, or excuse me, higher than the E rating, not lower, higher than the E rating, the ball's drop, the runner's safe. If it's lower than the E rating, lower or equal, then the fielder hangs onto the ball and the runner's out. Likewise, if it's wild, you roll a d6, you compare to the E rating, and if the throw, or if that number is higher than the E rating, the throw's wild and off the mark, batter safe. If it's on, otherwise, if it's less, the throw's on target but late, runner is safe. Trailing runners advance to the next base if it's open. So it's going to be a wild. It's going to be a wild throw, possibly. If it's higher, or excuse me, if it's higher, then I give that an error on the fielder, error on the outfielder. If it's higher, because it was a wild throw. Otherwise, the runner's still safe, but it's not an error on the throw. Okay. Now, in all of these cases of the coach's choice, if you roll a 00, you're going to check the runner and the fielder receiving the throw for an injury. If you roll 55s, you're going to check the outfielder making the throw for an injury. So there's a possibility of an injury on these rolls. Okay? There is a possibility for that on these rolls. If you want to know what kind of hit it was, you can roll a d10. This is the basic rules here. And look at this chart based on whether it's a single or a double. And it'll tell you the type of ball that was hit and who it was hit to. Okay? This will kind of give you that, so you can kind of fill that in your mind of what happened on the play. So that's basic base running. That's just basic, right? Pretty simple, because you're just, most of the time it's runner advances the number of bases equal to the hit. Only in the case of a wheelhouse or with 2 outs do they get the extra base automatically. On a patient, they have the choice whether they want to try to attempt the extra base or not. Otherwise, they don't. Now, you can, if you want to take the decision on whether they try for the extra base out of your hands, you can compare a 2d6 roll to the runner's run rating. And if it's less than the run rating, he'll attempt the extra base, if you want to try to automate that a little bit. Okay, so that was basic. Let's look at advanced. Advanced, the chart is a little different. So on advanced, what you're going to do is you're going to roll 2d6, or compare the 2d6 roll, I should say. You're going to take the lower number of the 2d6 roll, and you're going to look at this chart based on whether it was a single or a double, and based on whether there was a runner on first, a runner on second. You're going to look at this chart. So let's say there were runners on first and second. It's a single and you roll the 5. Looking here, the runner on first advances 1 base to second. The runner on second scores. Okay? So you just look here and compare, and that tells you how many bases runners advance and all that fun stuff. Okay? Again, there is a choice section here. So 1 base plus choice, you go with coach's choice like we talked about before. You would just do the coach's choice like we talked about before. So advanced, you have this chart that tells you. So in some cases, a single is going to lead to 2 bases. In some cases, it's going to be 1, regardless of the out situation or whether it was wheelhouse and all of that. However, with 2 outs, runners rated 6 or higher always advance 2 bases on a single and score on a double. Runners 5 or lower have a choice. So with 2 outs, you don't look at this chart. You go based on the runner rating to determine whether they advance the extra base. So in most cases, they're going to advance that extra base on 2 outs. You'll notice it doesn't say anything about wheelhouse. I know some people play that wheelhouse always gives you an extra base, even in advanced. And again, that's a tweak, but it's not specifically stated in the rules that I can see. So that's advanced. Advanced, the only difference between basic and advanced is that you look at this chart instead of just going based on the hits and the number of bases. Now, let's talk about the fast action cards, because that's another thing people use frequently. Fast action cards. In that case, what you would do is, if there is a single or a double, you would flip the next card and look in that section. So if it was a single, you'd look here, soft blooper into short right field or left field based on the handedness of the batter. Right? So right-handed batter is going to hit to the fielder on that side. Left-handed batter is going to hit to the fielder on that side. Runner on first advances 1 base, runner on second scores. So you're just going to read this and do what it says. So you don't have to look at a chart. It just tells you. Likewise, let's say you hit a double and there's a runner on first. Double. Line drive into the alley in center field. Runners advance 2 bases. So that tells you exactly what to do. You don't even have to think about it. So that's why a lot of people use the fast action cards. Now, even if you're using the fast action cards, you follow the 2-out rules in most cases. So much like advanced, runners 6 or higher, with a run rating 6 or higher, get an extra base. even using the fast action cards. Okay. So you're going to ignore the fast action card if a runner has a 6 or higher with 2 outs. So with 2 outs, you're going to ignore the fast action card. And runners 6 or higher get an extra base. Runners with a run rating of 5 get a choice. You do the coach's choice like you see here. And if you're using the fast action cards with 2 outs, runners with a run rating of 4 or lower stick with whatever's on the fast action card. They don't get a choice and they don't get the extra base automatically. Now, it could be that they'll still get the extra base off the fast action card, but it's not automatic. Okay? So that's how you would use the fast action cards. Now, again, I have my own chart that I use. So again, I base this kind of on ID Jester's template, and I've tweaked it. So see, I have single runner, does the runner move first to third? Single, does he move second to home? Double, does he run first to home based on where it's hit? And the out section, the out situation, if there's 2 out, if it's in play, if it's a wheelhouse, and so on. Then I check this chart. But that's me. Everybody has to find their own way of doing it, whatever works for you. And again, you can combine. Joe has said that you can combine and play it whatever way you want. But as long as you find a way that works for you, I think that's what matters. So let's talk about ground out results, because that's the other thing that can be confusing sometimes, is how do players advance on ground out results? This kind of goes along with base running. We talked about the hits, runner advancement on hits. Let's talk about runner advancement on ground outs. Well, if there's nobody on base, it's pretty simple. G whatever, and that tells you what fielder made the play and the place to first base to get the out at first. G5 would be a 5-3 ground out. This is with no runners on. G4 would be a second base, a ground out to second, so on. The only difference is that if it's a ground out to first base, if the percentage ends in a 0, 1, or a 2, then the first baseman flips to the pitcher who's covering first base to get the out. Otherwise, it's unassisted first baseman takes it to first himself. But on a 0, 1, or 2, a percentage ending in a 0, 1, or 2, then he flips to the pitcher who's covering first base. So that's with nobody on base. Let's say there is a runner on first only. That's the next easiest play. Then it's a potential double play ball. So let's say let me roll something that's going to give us a result that's going to give us something. Okay, here we go. Oh, perfect. 783 for Koufax. Let's say there's a runner on first. Okay, 7 is a tough out. 83 is going to be an out anyway. 83 is a G4. Okay, so what you do to determine whether there's a double play, because there's a double play possibility because it's hit to the second baseman, is you compare the 2d6 number to the DP ratings of the pitcher and the hitter. In this case, a 4 and a 6. A 4 and a 6. And you look at the lower of the two numbers. And this 2d6 has to be equal to or below that number for it to be a double play. In this case, it'd be a 4 to 6 to 3 double play because it was hit to the second baseman. Otherwise, if it's not equal to or below the lowest double play number, then it's a force out at second. So 4 to 6. 4 to 6, they get the runner at second. But the runner, Ozzie Smith in this case, is safe. They can't turn 2. Okay? If this number, this 2d6 number had been an 11 or a 12, then the only play is to first base. They don't try to turn 2. The only play is to first base. So maybe there's a diving stop, whatever the case may be, or maybe it's hitting the hole. The fielder's only play is to first. If this is an 11 or a 12. Okay? I play it that it's the only plays to first on a 10, 11, or 12. So just a very minor tweak. but I play 10 or 11 or 12, and it's the only place to first. And that's just based on some percentages and that kind of thing that I've read about. But the way it's officially listed is 11 or 12, the only place to first. Okay. Now, a couple little tweaks. If this percentage ends in a 6, and it's hit to the shortstop, and it was hit to the shortstop, and it's a double play, then it is a 6-3 unassisted double play. So the shortstop steps on second himself and throws to first if it ends in a 6. Again, the ball would have to have been a double play and hit to the shortstop and have the number end in 6 for that to be the case. So that's what that is. Now, the way I play it is if the number here is half or less of the double play rating, then it's unassisted 4-3 or 6-3. So either 6 steps on second himself, throws to first, or 4 steps on second himself, which would be very rare, but throws to first. That's the way I play it, but that's not in the rules. Likewise, if it's the end of an inning, if there's 2 outs already and a runner on first and you get a potential double play ball, well, they can't turn 2 because it's the 3rd out, right? Then what I do is if it would have been a double play, then they get the out at second to end the inning instead of throwing to first. That's how I play it. That's just how I play it, though. Okay, so those are the 2 easiest results for groundouts, and the double play mechanic is something you're going to use more than in just that case. So let's talk about that. Now we're going to talk about runners on first and second. Runners on first and second. So in those cases, if it's a ground out to second in this case, let's say it was a ground out to second again, runners on first and second instead of just first now, then you're going to follow the double play mechanic to see if they turn 2. And if it's a double play, it's going to be, in this case, 4 to 6 to 3 double play, but the runner on second is going to advance to third on the play. Okay, so that's the only tweak. You're still going to follow the double play mechanic to see if the double play happens. If the double play doesn't happen, much like before, it's going to be a force out at second in most cases. Or if it's an 11 or 12, the rules as written, the only plays to first, and both runners advance. However, there are a couple minor tweaks to this. And minor tweaks are that if the ball is hit to the pitcher, this is according to the rules, if the ball is hit to the pitcher, the shortstop, or the third baseman, and the percentage ends in a 5, then the double play is third to first. Now, I don't think it almost ever happens that you get a 1 to 5 to 3 double play or a 6 to 5 to 3 double play. So I tend to ignore the shortstop or pitcher possibilities, but you could get a third baseman that steps on the bag and throws to first for a double play that way. But I don't know that it's ever happened. Well, can't say never. That the shortstop has thrown to third and then they've completed the double play to first. Maybe a handful of times, but not very often. But that's what you would do in cases of first or second to see where the double play happens. Now, let's talk about first and third. First and third. If the infield is playing at regular depth, you would follow the same rules for checking for double play that you did before. Okay? And it'd be a regular double play. The only difference is the runner on third scores. The runner on third is going to score if you're playing at regular depth because they're going for the double play in that case. They're either going to get the double play, there's going to be a force out second, or they're trying to get the double play, or the only play is to first. Either way, the runner on third is going to score. If the infield is in, that's a whole other ball game, the whole other result. And we're going to talk about that separately in a minute. So hold that thought for now. Second or third, let's say it's second and third. So there's no double play chance because it's second and third. Okay. In that case, again, it's going to the result's going to be determined by whether the infield's playing in or not, or the corners are playing in or not. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's say they're playing regular depth. Well, if the ball's hit to the pitcher is going to look the runner back and throw to first, because the pitcher is always considered to be playing in. So if it's hit to the pitcher, he's looking the runner back and throwing to first for the out. If the ball is hit to the second baseman or shortstop, in those cases, the runner on third is going to score, and the only plays to first base because they're too far back to get him at home. Again, this is considering no infield in. Okay. Likewise, if the ball is hit to the second baseman or first baseman, if it's hit to the second baseman, the runner on third scores because he's back too far, and the runner on second is going to go to third. Okay. So that's if you have the runner in second is going to move to third if it's hit to the right side on the play. Second is short, runner in third is going to score because they're too far back. Let's say it's hit to the corners, first or third baseman. The runner on third has a choice. He can try to score, but he has a -1 to his run rating if he tries to score, because they're playing a little closer to home. So he can try to score, and he has a -1 run rating if he tries to score. And you go to a play at home chart, which is in the charts we'll look at here in a minute when we look at the infield in charts. I talked about before, if the ball is hit to the right side, the runner on second moves to third on the play automatically. Well, if it's hit to the left side, third baseman or shortstop, the runner on second does move to third if he has a run rating of 7 or higher. So if he has a run rating of 7 or higher, he moves to third on the throw to first over here. Again, this is all assuming that there's no infield in. All right, so let's talk about infield in. Infield in. Here we are. So you have the option. It's a manager's choice. If there are runners on third base, and less than 2 outs, of course, to decide to have your infield or corners play in. You would choose that before the dice is rolled, or before the dice are rolled. And usually it's to try to prevent that run. Okay? So that's what you would be using it for. And you'd bring corners in if you want to maintain a double play chance. So the second baseman and shortstop stay back, but the first and third baseman come in. Or you bring the whole infield in if you're really trying to prevent that run. Or maybe there's a runner just on third base. It doesn't have any effect on bunts. The sacrifice results have been determined independent of infield positioning. And as I mentioned before, the pitcher and the catcher are always considered to be playing in. So basically what you would do is, if you have the infield in, anytime you have a ball hit, a ground out hit to one of those in positions, first, second, third, or short, depending on who's playing in, instead of referring to runner advancement and all of that, you would refer to this chart. You'd roll 2 more D6, and then you would check this chart. And you can see that, there are various results here. 2 to 5, the batter's out. Runner on first advances, other runners hold. So that's the best option for the defense. 6 to 8, the runner on third is out at home and the batter's safe. So the runner on third tried to score, got thrown out at the plate, batter is safe. Other runners advance a base. 9 to 10 is the ball gets through the drawn-in infield. And it's basically a single. All runners are safe. Runners advance a base, batter safe. 11 or 12, the runner breaks from home. They throw home, and you would check this infield in play at home area to determine the results. And remember, we've had that before, We've had that before with a runner on third, where we would check the play at home. That was runners on second and third, and the runner had a choice. The third runner on third had a choice to try to score on groundouts to first or third, and you check the play at home chart. Well, here's where the play at home chart is right here. Now, there are specific cases, of course. So 2 to 5, the batter's out, runner on first advances, other runners hold. If the bases are loaded and the 2d6 is 2 to 5, then they throw the runner on third out at home and the batter out at first. So it's a home to first double play. Other runners would advance. So 2 to 5 with bases loaded, it's a home to first double play. If it's a 6 to 8, if the bases are loaded, then you roll a d10, and if it's higher than the batter's run rating, then again it's that play at home, the batter's out at home, and they throw the runner out, or the runner's out at home, and they throw the batter out. So it's another double play, like we mentioned. The only difference between 2 to 5 and 6 to 8 is 2 to 5, it's automatically a double play, home to first. 6 to 8, the runner has a chance to beat it out with that D10 roll. So if the D10 roll is higher than his run rating, then it's a home to first double play. If it's lower than his run rating, he beats the throw at first. So with bases loaded, there's a couple of tweaks to that. Now, if you have to check the infield in play at home, then what you do is you compare the 2d6 total to the runner's run rating. If it's greater than the run rating, he's out at home. If it's less than the run rating, he's safe at home. And if it's equal to the run rating, then you roll percentage dice, and on 0 to 49, you roll a d6 and check the catcher's error rating. If it's higher than his E rating, he drops the ball. Otherwise, he holds onto the ball. Either way, the runner's still safe. Okay? That's if it equals the run rating. If that percentage dice was 50 to 99, he'd be out. Okay, so 0 to 49, he's safe. 50 to 99, he's out. And on safe results, there's a chance the catcher dropped the ball, and that's why he's safe. Likewise, if the percentage dice are 0-0, you check the catcher for injury. If they're 99, you check the runner for injury. So that's the play at home. There's not really a chart. There's just a description. But that's how you would check it. The other thing that I've seen on Facebook, was it on Facebook? No, it may have been the Delphi forums, actually, is that Joe, the creator of the game, suggests that on defense checks, if the ball's hit to one of the fielders that are in, you reduce their letter range by one step. So an A becomes a B becomes a C becomes a D, F stays the same. D becomes an F stays the same. Now, I haven't seen that in the rules written anywhere. It could have been in the rules and it was left out, or whatever the case may be. But Joe has suggested that is the intention, is that defense checks would result in a letter reduction for those fielders on defense checks if those players are playing in. So that's infield in. What about flyout results? Well, on flyouts to the outfielders, if it's a wheelhouse or a patient, it's a deep fly ball. It's a sacrifice fly. Runner on third scores on wheelhouse and patient. If it's hit to the right fielder, and then the runner on second can move up to third on those wheelhouse and patient results. If it's hit to center fielder and it's a wheelhouse or patient, runners with a 7 or more run rating moved from second or third. If the run rating is less than 7, or the ball's hit to left, then they could choose to try to make it to third, but In those cases, there's a run rating -2 applied. So if the run rating is less than 7, or the ball's hit to left, then you reduce the run rating by 2 if they want to try to make it to third. That's on Wheelhouse and Patient results. Other results, any other result, the runner on third can score if his run rating 7 or higher on any flyout, if it's not Wheelhouse or Patient. And much like before, if it's less than 7, he has a choice. And you look at the coach's choice chart to determine that. If the runner's on second, he advances on a 7 or higher run rating on balls hit to right or center. Otherwise, he holds. So the only chance that a runner on second has to advance to third is anything other than the Wheelhouse or Patient. Or Wheelhouse or Patient, I should say. He has a chance to advance to third. Or if he has a run rating 7 or higher. Otherwise, he holds. He has no choice. When all of this said, if the rating is if it was a tough result, you reduce the run rating by 2. So a player with a run rating of 7 becomes a 5, and so on. So tough can really make sure that the runners aren't moving up as much as they would. And again, I have my own chart that I use for these kinds of plays, but I still use the tough -2 run rating modifier in those cases. So that's flyouts. Let's talk about stealing bases. First of all, the first option, again, so there are multiple options here, but the first option is manager's choice, which means you just choose when you want to try to steal a base. Okay? And when stealing, in most cases, you're going to compare the steal rating, Ozzie Smith is a B, and the catcher's arm, which is a 1 through 5. And you're going to compare those on the stolen base chart right here. There's stealing second and third, and here's stealing home. You notice the cross section here. So if Ozzie Smith was a B, catcher arm of 3, he would look at these options. So he's safe on a 27 to 99. So that's how normal steal attempts would be decided. Again, it could be manager's choice. That could be one option. You could also use an auto steal option. I call this auto steal with a jump. And in that case, you compare the 2d6 roll to this first number, which is the jump rating. And if it's that number or less on the 2d6, then the runner will attempt to steal because he got a good jump. And you compare the steal rating of B, cross-reference with the catcher's arm, and look at that chart like we just showed. Again, the difference here is that it's an auto steal, so it takes your choice away. You just look at the 2d6 compared to the jump, and that tells you whether you try to steal or not. If you're trying to steal third, the 2d6 has to be lower than this jump rating, and it has to be doubles. So in Ozzie Smith's case, it'd have to be a 1-1 or a 2-2. Okay, then he could try to steal third. In the auto steal cases, you only check the first time a runner reaches base. The other option, one step higher than that, is to check there's a jump chart. I have to get to it. Here it is. This is optional, but it's a get a jump chart. Instead of just comparing the 2d6 to the runner's jump rating, in this case, you cross-reference the jump rating with the pitcher's hold rating and roll percentage dice. And that tells you what happens. Either he's going to attempt, in which case we check the attempt just like we did before. He's going to hold, which means he doesn't try to attempt. Or he attempts with a poor jump, in which case his letter steal rating gets lowered by 1 letter. So that's how you would do that. Now, if the catcher reduce for an F, you'd reduce catcher's arm by one if it's two or more. So it makes it even tougher for the Fs because the catcher's arm gets lowered. But there's no way to get worse than an F, so that's why they kind of made that tweak. Anyway, this would combine the hold rating and the jump rating to determine whether he steals or not. Now, this will result in fewer stolen base attempts because of the extra hurdle that has to be jumped. The extra hurdle that has to be overcome in order to try to steal. Just keep that in mind. The other thing to consider is that there is another option, and that's the pitcher hold rating option instead. And in that case, instead of comparing the 2d6 to the jump rating of the batter, you compare the 2d6 to the hold rating of the pitcher. And if it's that or less, then they try to steal. You ignore the jump rating of the batter in those cases. Either way, you will occasionally see players with a minus or a plus after the jump rating. So 5 minus or 5 plus. And in those cases, the first time they reach base and have a chance to steal, if it's a minus, their jump rating gets lowered by 1, and if it's a plus, it gets raised by 1 for that attempt only, or that check only. The rest of the game, you just use their regular jump rating. But the first time they reach base and have a chance to steal, if there's a plus or a minus next to the jump rating, you'd lower it by 1 or raise it by 1 depending. Now, it's important also to note that some batters do not have any auto steal chance at all because they didn't steal any bases. So then this jump number would be blank because they don't have a chance to auto steal. If you, in this steal attempt, if you roll double sixes, there's a chance for a pickoff. Let's get back to that chart. Here we go. So when the 2d6 are rolled and they total 12 on a steal attempt, you roll percentage dice in this pickoff chart based on the pitcher's hold rating to determine what happens. And by the way, the steal and the hold and the results are over here on the right. So you have everything from obviously safe, caught, means they're caught stealing. You have balk chance on pickoffs. It's a balk chance down here. You have drop. If it's D6, you roll a D6. If it's higher than the fielder's E rating, the ball's dropped and the runner's safe. You check the fielder for injury in that case, and the fielder gets an error. If it's less than the fielder's E rating, he hangs onto the ball, and the runner's out. You check the runner for injury. That's on the drop question mark check. SB plus E2, the runner's safe, and you roll the D6, compare the catcher's E rating, and much like before, if it's higher, the throw's wild and sails into the outfield, and runners advance an extra base on the error. If it's lower, the throw is on target but late. And finally, wild. You roll the D6, check the pitcher's E rating. That's for pickoffs. And much like the drop on wild, if it's higher, the pitcher makes an error and everybody advances a base. If it's lower, runner's safe, getting back. So that's how you read those. Now, once again, people use the fast action cards for stealing. You'll notice, in addition to the chart down here, that there's a result, excellent, very good, normal, fair, and poor. So if you're using fast action cards, you would look at that excellent, very good, normal, fair, or poor. Ozzie Smith, I said, was a B. We said a B3 if the catcher had a 3 arm. That's very good. So you'd come down here, you'd flip a card. Let me get back here. We flip a card. Very good. Safe. And that'll just tell you don't have to roll dice. So that's another option. Now, I use auto steal with the jump chart, that big jump chart. but I use my best judgment and I don't try to steal. If the team is like down by a bunch of runs and it's late in the game, I overrule that and I don't auto steal. Next up is sacrifice bunting. Sacrifice bunting. Once again, you have several options. If the manager's choice option, you can just choose to sacrifice bunt whenever you want. You could do it that way. Otherwise, you can auto check for a sac bunt. Here's the bunt rating, B, and here's the auto range. If you're doing the auto, then if there's a runner on first and or second, and there's less than 2 outs, you roll the 2 6-sided die, and you compare, in this case 4, to this range, and 4 is not in this range, so he doesn't try to sac bunt. If it had been a 2 or a 3 or an 11, he would have tried to sacrifice bunt in that case. That's the auto check. Otherwise, if he does try to sac bunt, you look at this bunt rating, and you look at this chart, and you roll percentage dice, and that tells you what happens. Either the batter is going to pop out, he is going to potentially pop into a double play if there's a runner on first. Lead is the lead runner's thrown out, the batter's safe, so they get the lead runner. SH is a regular sacrifice hit. Miss is the batter misses the pitch. If he misses again, it's a strikeout. And then E is, once again, you're going to compare a D6 to the fielder's E rating, and if it's higher, they make an error. If it's equal to or lower, batter's safe on like a regular sacrifice hit. Regardless, you would check the D6, roll the D6 to determine who the fielder was. 1 or 4, it's pitcher, 2, 6, catcher, 3, first base, 5, third base. Normally, you just, on the 2d6 that you had rolled, you just look at the lower die and you can compare it to this so you don't have to roll again. Much like stealing, some batters do not have a sacrifice bunt rating or auto rating at all because they never sacrificed. What about squeeze plays? Well, there is no auto squeeze play. There is no auto squeeze play chance. You have to just decide if you're trying to do that. We'll talk about that in a second. What about bunt for hit? Well, you can't bunt for a hit. It's incorporated into the hitting ratings already. So some of those singles could have been bunts for hits. But there's no separate mechanic to try to determine that. Okay, so let's say you do want to squeeze. We can't do it. The auto squeeze doesn't work, so we have to choose if we're going to try to squeeze. And what you do in that case is you look at the bunt rating, you roll percentage dice, and if the result is an SH, sacrifice hit, check the 2d6. And if the 2d6 is lower than the run rating of that runner on third, he's safe at the plate. If it's equal to or less than the run rating, he's safe at the plate. Otherwise, he's thrown out at the plate. And when you're squeeze bunting, you're going to use column D. That's the other kicker. So I think I may have said you use the bunt rating, but you don't. On a squeeze bunt, you use column D. You're going to use column D. So that's the other modifier. And again, once again, you can use the fast action cards, much like before. Here's the bunt letters, and you're just gonna flip a card, and it'll show you sacrifice hit or whatever happens, and then it shows you the fielder that fielded it. So it takes away having to do those extra rolls. Much like before, I only bunt if there's a runner on first only. I don't bunt if there's a runner on first and second, unless it's a really high sacrifice bunter. And I don't usually bunt if there's 2 outs. Or, 1 out. You never bunt when there's 2 outs because that'd be the 3rd out. All right, now on to hit and run. We're getting to the end here, folks. So let's say you want to hit and run. Here's hit and run section. Hit and run is usually if there's a runner on first and or first and second. And the advantage is that runners get an extra base, generally on base hits, and there's less chance of a double play because they're running on the pitch. The disadvantage is you take away the walks. Lineouts can result in double plays. If the batter strikes out, the runner has to steal. And there's lower extra base hit chances. Okay? So basically what you do is look at this hit and run area. Okay? And on a patient, remember walks can't happen. It's a foul ball. You re-roll on the in-play section for the batter. So it's never going to be a walk. So on a patient, you're going to re-roll in the in-play section to determine the result. On a wheelhouse, you re-roll the 2d6, and if it's doubles, it's a normal wheelhouse result. But if it's not doubles, then 0 to 49 on percentage, it's a single. 50 to 99, it's an out. And you refer to the batter's out section to decide what kind of out it is. So the wheelhouse gets taken away for the most part, unless you roll doubles. The advantage is, again, as I said, all runners are going to advance 2 bases on a single or score on a double. And if a runner is rated 7 or higher, he's going to score from first base on a single if the outfielder's arm is 8 or higher. So if it's a bad arm outfielder and he is a good rated runner, he has a chance to score from first base on a single. Otherwise, he advances 2 bases and stops. All lineouts are double play. They double up the lead runner or the closest runner in hit and run cases. On flyouts to center or right on hit and runs, if there's that runner on first, re-roll the 2d6 and the d10 and a d10. And if the 2d6 are doubles and the d10 is greater than the runner's run rating, he's thrown out trying to return to first. So there's a chance he gets thrown out trying to return to first. Again, if the batter strikes out, the lead runner has to attempt to steal, has to attempt to steal. So if the patient, the wheelhouse, the line out, the fly out to the center or right, if it's a ground out, if it's a regular ground out on a hit and run, you would refer to this chart down here, this 2d6 chart, to determine the result. It could be a double play, but it's only a 2 to 3 chance of a double play. 4 to 10, batter gets thrown out at first. All runners advance 1 base. 11 or 12, runner on first is forced at second. So it really eliminates the double play chance because 2 or 3 is way less than a regular double play chance. So on groundouts, use this chart here on hit and run. Okay, pitcher stamina. Let's look at Koufax again. He has a fatigue of 8. Okay, that means that what that number represents is that if he has given up 3 or more runs, then starting in the 8th inning, he is tired or he's fatigued. So this is the inning that you check to see if he's fatigued. And if he's given up 3 or more runs, he's considered fatigued in the 8th inning. If he has not given up 3 or more runs, then he is not fatigued until he does so. If a pitcher gives up 6 or more runs, then he's fatigued at that point that he gives up his 6th run. He's fatigued at that point. So if a pitcher gets shelled in the first inning, he could be fatigued right away in the first inning. So that's starters. Relievers, it's a little different. Let me see if I can get to a reliever here. Lee Smith, short plus. Okay, short relievers are fatigued once they go over 2 innings automatically, or they've given up 2 runs. more than 2 runs, excuse me, then they're fatigued. Typically, short relievers only last an inning, or they're only supposed to pitch an inning. If this had said long, then they get they're fatigued once they go over 3 innings or give up more than 3 runs. They typically only pitch 1 to 3 innings for long relievers. And by the way, that's regardless of innings. In the case of relievers, is any inning that they appear in. So even if they only pitch to 1 batter in an inning, that's one of those 2 or 3 innings that we're talking about. Some relievers have a plus or a pound sign, that kind of thing. And what that means is they, if they come in an official save situation, which is they come in with less than 3, the other team has a less than 3 run, or excuse me, they have a 3-run lead or less, or it's an official save situation. You can look that up in MLB rules if you want to know what it is. They're not fatigued until the game is tied. So Lee Smith could come in, and he won't be fatigued until the game's tied, because they're closers generally. And what happens when a pitcher is fatigued is, well, it's pretty serious. Is starting pitchers look at this chart and relief pitchers look at this chart, and all patient or tough results get changed into something else based on these charts. Okay? Likewise, ballpark results are automatically wheelhouse. They're automatically wheelhouse. So that's how that's determined. And you'll see not only are all ballparks automatically wheelhouse, but you get a wheelhouse result in a tough or patient as well if the pitcher's fatigued. So I've found the payoff pitch pitcher fatigue a very, very high penalty to keeping pitchers in there when they're fatigued. If you want to know pitcher rest, how much rest they should get, there's a chart here for that. Based on if they're a starter, how many innings they pitched, how many days of rest they should have. So you can look at this chart to determine that. Short or long relievers, likewise, you can check that. And this tells you how many consecutive days they can play and all that fun stuff. So that is payoff pitch. That is payoff pitch. I've pretty much covered everything in the book, not necessarily in that order, but now you see how how you're supposed to play. I do have, as I said, my own chart for runner advancement that I use. ID Jester made this template, and then I've tweaked some of the numbers in here to be a little bit more to my liking for different situations. So that's how I play. And I also use a pregame chart to determine results, injuries that happen before the game starts, weather, that kind of thing. I use my own pregame chart to determine some of that stuff because I play a season and I want to have things be a little bit more realistic in terms of injuries and weather possibilities and rest for players and that kind of thing. So I have my own chart for that. Once again, as Joe has said, you play it the way you want to play it. I've given you what I think are the official rules. As I said, I'm probably 95% right. I may have missed, I may be wrong on a couple little minor things here or there. Please leave those down below if you notice anything that I'm wrong about. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of background on payoff pitch and how to play it. A long video, but I'm going to add chapters in here so you can skip to the section you want to skip to. But that's where we will leave things today. I do have a couple of projects going on that I also post on my channel. I have my website that you can go see the results of those projects, baseballmaelstrom.com. Head over there if you want to check the projects that I have going on out. I have Payoff Pitch Project, made up of Hall of Famers and non-Hall of Famers. And I also have currently a season ticket project, Best of the 90s tournament. I'm doing best of tournaments, best of the decades tournaments with different decades. So check those out as well. I've played History Maker Baseball before, and I've played some other games too. But regardless of all of that, hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully you found this video useful. And hopefully you refer back to it as you need to, if you need some refreshers on some of the way things work in the game. If you found this helpful, please let me know in the comments. Consider subscribing to this channel. I may do other games, how to play other games. I may do that, depending. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, have a great evening.